What if Andy Dalton keeps playing this well? What does that mean then for the Carolina Panthers' future at quarterback? I'll answer that question among other listener questions in this weekly Wednesday mailbag edition of Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, the part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Wednesdays, like today, throughout the entirety of the regular season, I'm right here on the show answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. What you got to do is either at me or DM me. And of course, if you'd like to follow me, but it's not required, on Twitter at Julian Council to get your questions in immediately following Carolina Panthers games. Don't send questions in on Thursday or Friday or Saturday. Wait till after the game on Sunday. Get them in to me on Monday, and then Tuesday, late Tuesday afternoon, typically around 6 or so, is when I record the show. So that's the best time to get the questions in by. So at me or DM me to get those questions in for next week's edition of the show. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Carolina Panthers will welcome in the 0-3 Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday at Bank of America Stadium. And who thought that Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and the Bengals would be 0-3 through 3 weeks, losing on Monday Night Football against the Washington Commanders. And Jaden Daniels looked really damn good watching him on Monday night there in Cincinnati. The Carolina Panthers 1-2, coming off of a 36-22 win on the road against the Las Vegas Raiders. Andy Dalton cooked over 300 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, becoming the first quarterback in the NFL this season to put up those numbers. And now has a lot of people wondering, what does this mean for the Carolina Panthers moving forward? Heard on Monday from Dave Canales, Panthers head coach, that Andy Dalton is, quote, our quarterback. We also heard that 8 days earlier about Bryce Young. And then the next day, that was not the case, as they decided to bench the former number 1 overall pick in favor of Andy Dalton. But I think Andy Dalton's going to be the quarterback for the time being. But how long will he be the Carolina Panthers quarterback? Will it just be the next coming weeks? Will it be in 25? Could it be beyond then? We'll see. And that's a question that Jordan has for me as we kick off this mailbag today, asking, I don't want to get carried away after only 1 game, but if this continues, do the Panthers extend Andy Dalton for 1 to 2 years? Possibly. After watching that game on Sunday and what Andy Dalton was able to do for the Panthers and allowing them to have a functional offense, allowing them to be balanced, to be able to run the football, Chuba Hubbard, and also get weapons like Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette all involved, it gave Carolina something they had not received the first 2 weeks against New Orleans and Los Angeles with Bryce Young at quarterback. As unfortunate as it was that Bryce was not able to play at even a below average level, he was playing just horrid. And we all understand that. And the hope is for the Carolina Panthers that maybe one day they'll go back to Bryce Young. But after watching what Andy Dalton played on Sunday, I don't see how they can possibly go back to Bryce Young. And understand this, Andy's not going to keep playing like that. If he does, he's going to be the MVP of the league. And the Panthers are going to the playoffs, and hell, maybe they go to the Super Bowl. I don't think that latter part's going to happen, but there's certainly going to be a playoff contender, and he's going to be an MVP candidate if he goes out there and slices through NFL defenses for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns every single week. He's going to come back down to earth. Now, I'm not saying that Andy Dalton's going to go from having a stellar day like that to going out and not being able to move the offense down the field. Like, there will be some weeks that will be harder to do it than others, but I don't expect Andy Dalton just to completely fall off a cliff. I also don't expect him to play like he played against Las Vegas every single week. But if he's able to allow the offense to function and to have that ability that we saw against the Raiders on Sunday and give the team a chance to win, then the Panthers do have to think long and hard about what their future at that position is. In the interim, they have a quarterback that can help them win. Long-term, they still don't necessarily have an answer. It could be Bryce Young, possibly. I have a hard time seeing that happen just based off of recent trends in the NFL and a team so quick to bench him 2 weeks into the season after all they did to try to help Bryce this offseason and heading into the early parts of the year. But we'll see what they decide to do. But right now, let's say that Andy Dalton continues to play this well. Not as well as he played against Las Vegas, but continues to play really well. And the Panthers feel like he's their best option moving in to the offseason in 2025. Geno Smith, who also worked with Dave Canales a couple years ago in Seattle, who had a renaissance late in his career. He signed a 3-year, $75 million contract. Now, that sounds like a lot of money, right? Andy Dalton, 36 right now, going to turn 37 next month in October, going to be a 38-year-old quarterback. Do you want to sign up for 38, 39, 40 as far as his contract? Do they want to bring him back for a 3-year, $75 million deal? Probably not. But understand this. Geno Smith's contract had $27.3 million guaranteed at signing. That included the signing bonus and his 2023 salary. That protected Seattle to where if Geno went out and didn't play well, if Dave Canales no longer there, having gone to Tampa, that they would be fine moving on and going to get another quarterback, whether that be via the draft. And they had plenty of assets thanks to the Broncos trading for Russell Wilson and being terrible with Russell Wilson. And they could have maybe signed someone else off the street if they wanted to. They have flexibility. And if Andy plays this way and the organization decides they want to move off of Bryce, that is a contract to look at and say that would make sense for the Carolina Panthers. I don't know if they want to give that much money guaranteed at signing, but that's kind of what a quarterback salary is. $27-30 million for Andy Dalton would make sense in year 15 next year for him in the NFL. That would make more sense than obviously like $40 million, which I don't think they want to give him. So that would be a contract to look at if he continues to play well, give the Panthers a chance to win, and they do decide to move off of Bryce. And even if they don't decide to move off of Bryce, maybe that's something they want to do as they sit there and continue to develop him behind the scenes. Billy asking, if Andy Dalton stays healthy and has a great year to where we are in playoff contention, do you think there's a higher chance we continue to build a roster in the draft, no quarterback taken, or trade Bryce Young and draft a quarterback in round 1 or 2? I think if they continue to keep Andy Dalton healthy and he plays well, has him in playoff contention, and what is playoff contention? Is that 8-9 wins? Like, that would be nice to see. And it's not like the Panthers are that far removed from being in playoff contention. Just back in 2022, they were right there, week 17 on the road against Tampa, and had an opportunity to win a division that day. Of course, they lost that game, finished 7-10, but they were in playoff contention. So let's say about 7, 8, 9 wins. That would put them there in the NFC South, which looks to be pretty competitive through 3 weeks so far this season. I think for the Panthers, if Andy is able to help this offense function the way it did on Sunday at its maximum levels, but still just be an above to just an average to above average offense in the NFL, that it would make way more sense for the Panthers to just continue to build the overall roster, because there are questions still in a lot of areas. Offensive line-wise, they've looked great so far. They got to figure out what the deal is going to be with Corbett after this season. Taylor Moton, his deal as well. Also looking at receiver, Adam Thielen got a hamstring injury. He's going to be on IR for the next 4 weeks. We'll talk more about that and the impact that's having on the Panthers later on here on the show potentially, but he could be done after this year. Deontay Johnson, who was outstanding on Sundays, a free agent after this season. Your entire safety group, also free agents. Shaq Thompson could be gone after this year. Now, Trevin Wallace could be that replacement. Defensive line, still a lot of work that needs to go there. There's a lot of areas for the Panthers to address. So I think, just based off of one game, but this is really not just based off of one game. This has just been my feelings anyway. The Panthers need to be focused on building the roster, and they should have been focused on building the roster the last couple of seasons instead of trying to cut corners and going after Sam and Baker and trading up, giving up the farm to get a quarterback. You got to try to build the roster the right way. They cut corners trying to find a quarterback. They gave up valuable assets, and look where they're at right now, where it looks like Andy Dalton's something that can help them win, but he's not the future. And that's part of the reason why I had said previously, it does you nothing to bench Bryce Young and put Andy Dalton in there. While Andy might help you win games right now, the roster's not at a place where they're truly going to be contenders for anything this season, in my opinion, even after watching how Andy played on Sunday. It's not going to be like that every week. They have so many areas that they still need to improve upon. So why not give the quarterback Bryce Young an opportunity to try to grow through it, play through the struggles, instead of going to a quarterback who may help you in the interim as a better option and possibly next season, but he's not going to be around in 2029 or in the 2030s to help this team win football games in all likelihood. So that's what I meant when I said it doesn't really do them anything at all other than, I guess, allow the offense to function and be able to evaluate the team, which isn't nothing, but just the long-term aspect of Tepper saying Bryce gives us an opportunity to win multiple Super Bowls and that you have to always be in constant pursuit of a quarterback who can win you Super Bowl, something he said back in December of 2020. So we'll see. I think it makes more sense if he plays well, stays healthy, that they give him the kind of deal I talked about that Geno Smith got in Seattle, and that they trade back if they're in the top 10 or top 5, get more assets, draft some players who can come in, help them early on and develop those guys and just build the overall roster, then trading away Bryce and then drafting a quarterback again. I just don't think that makes the most sense. And this is not considered to be a great quarterback class coming here in 2025. So that's how I feel about things right now here on Wednesday, September 25th, 2024. Now, there are questions about Andy. There's also questions about Bryce Young and what his future is here in Carolina and the development the Panthers are saying they're going to continue to do with him behind the scenes. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And went over to FanDuel yesterday, took a look at the MVP odds. Andy Dalton plus 20,000. Looked over at the comeback player of the year odds. And of course, Aaron Rodgers is the favorite, but Andy Dalton, who's so far, I get only one game, has outplayed Aaron Rodgers. No, plus 2,500 comeback player of the year. So go ahead, get your money down on Andy Dalton for MVP and comeback player of the year, even though it feels like comeback player of the year is probably your best bet there. But if you want to get a big return, MVP odds, why not? You only live once. You will get started with a $200 bet, $200 in bonus bets guarantee when you place your first $5 bet over there at FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. So we talked about a potential future of Andy Dalton here in Carolina. What about the future for Bryce Young? Ryan wants to know, what are the odds the Panthers turn Bryce Young into the Jordan Love project? Let him sit this year, maybe even next year, and then give him a shot when we get all we can get out of Andy Dalton. Just a thought. And I think it is a solid thought. I had plenty of people who have asked me a similar question to this about what's Bryce Young's future. Someone saying that I'm closing the door on Bryce Young too quickly. And just this is where I'm coming from. And understand, this is the guy who still believes that Bryce Young can be a quarterback in this league and have success in the right situation. He did not enter into a proper situation last year in Carolina, and the Panthers did him no favors. I think in large part because of the situation he was placed in last year. That's why we saw Bryce Young play the way he played week 1 and week 2. He did not trust the pocket. He did not trust what his receivers were doing. And that's built from all the scar tissue from a year ago. Now, he was not good enough week 1 and week 2. And eventually we were going to get to the spot where the Panthers were going to have an untenable situation where, for the betterment of the team and Young himself, they were going to put him down. I just didn't think 2 weeks in that they would do it, or that made sense. And yes, right move, obviously, because Andy Dalton helped them win a game. But long-term, is that the best thing for the organization? Yes, maybe no. We'll see how it works out down the road. Where I'm coming from is just based off of how things historically have gone the last couple of years when it comes to quarterbacks who are young, they get drafted in the first round by their teams, and then don't have that immediate early success. When I mean immediate, by year 3. And I have felt from the beginning that this should be a 3-year proposition for Bryce Young. And if it still is, great. If this is just a temporary timeout and he comes back next year or later on this season, cool. But if Andy Dalton keeps playing well and the team keeps reacting the way they are reacting to Dalton compared to how they're reacting behind Bryce Young, it's hard to put Bryce back in that situation. And I get the reporting from Rappaport and from Schefter and from Jonathan Jones about Bryce having just a temporary timeout and coming back, depending on how things play out. But man, Diana Orsini's coming out saying like she's also an insider, knows some things, talked to people within the organization who were saying he kept making the same mistakes over and over. She says it's over. And history tells you it's over. The Cardinals gave Josh Rosen one season, had the number 1 overall pick, drafted Kyler Murray. And Kyler Murray's been a good player. Josh Rosen's no longer in the NFL. The Jets gave Zach Wilson 1.5 years and then benched him, went to Mike White, brought in Aaron Rodgers. He lasted 4 plays, and then they had to throw Zach Wilson back out there, and it just was a situation where this is a guy they can't win with. They traded him this past offseason to Denver. The Bears, they gave Justin Fields 4 years, but then they, of course, have now moved on, or maybe it was 3 years. Yeah, it was 3 years. Now they have moved on. He's in Pittsburgh, and he's flourishing in a better situation with an excellent defense and run game to support him. And in the Patriots also. Matt Jones, it worked early. Then it wasn't working. Now he's gone in Jacksonville. Maybe it's another opportunity with Trevor not playing so well, but I don't think so. So just based off of how things have worked recently, this is where it feels like it's going to go. When those guys got benched, there was not a future. The Jets had a plan. They had a plan to where Aaron Rodgers is going to come in. Zach Wilson is going to sit behind Aaron Rodgers as long as Aaron was there in New York. So they're thinking last year, and probably this may be his last year. We'll see. And then they were going to give Zach another opportunity to be their guy after he sat, which is probably what they should have done in the first place, is have him sit and then learn. Like here in Carolina, Bryce Young probably, based on what we've seen from him and Andy Dalton, should have sat and had Andy play and then learn. Now they're trying to go back and do that. Like it's not apples to apples Jordan Love project where the Packers did the same thing with Aaron Rodgers. He sat behind Favre. Love sat behind Rodgers. And we even see in Kansas City, Mahomes, like there was a lot of concerns about his mechanics, his footwork. He sat behind Alex Smith for a year, working with Andy Reid, and came out and was the MVP the first year. And that's not going to be the case for everybody. There have been cases where guys like Josh Allen really didn't look good early on, but now he's excellent. And some guys just come out immediately look great. There's not one formula for quarterbacks, and everybody is different, and understand that. I just look at this situation where just looking at the past and knowing how volatile the owner is, and I get he was the biggest advocate for Bryce Young and wanted him, but would it really surprise you that he would be done after 18 starts based off of how he's gone about things in Carolina? It doesn't surprise me. So when I look at this, it's possible. The main question, though, about that is, what do you do with his contract? He's made the most of that money already this year and last year with the signing bonus as well. He's got 2 more years. The Panthers, after next season, will have an opportunity to pick up the 5th-year option, which is going to be like $20-something million. I would imagine they're probably not going to do that if he sits behind Andy Dalton this year and next, because they had not seen nearly enough from Bryce to want to give him that kind of money. And then after that, it would be his 4th year and his last year of his rookie deal where he could potentially get another opportunity. And if he plays well, you can obviously do the franchise tag. I know what Green Bay decided to do. Instead of giving Jordan Love the 5th-year option, they gave him an $8.7 million signing bonus with a base salary of $1 million that year. And there was a bunch of escalators that could have got him about $25 million based off of how he played. So it's possible that Carolina decides, let's bench Bryce for the rest of the year. Next year as well, give him some time to learn. I would think really if they're going to sit him down this year, you would bring him back next year, as this would be that year. And it'd be a very big year for Bryce Young to show the promise that he showed coming out of Alabama that led the Panthers to take him number 1 overall. But also financially, the Panthers got to figure out, is this guy someone worth investing in with that 5th-year option? So that's part of what makes it tricky when it comes to now deciding, let's sit him, maybe give him the rest of the year. And from all the reports, that does not appear to be the case, at least from the ones that Rappaport, Schefter, and Jones have told us. But Rossini's telling us it's over. Recent history is also telling us it's over. Maybe it's not. So we'll see what they do. I'm not necessarily closing the door on Bryce Young. My whole thing is I'm going based off of the recent trends. I had someone bring up Eli Manning as getting benched early on in his career and coming back. And that was, 20-something years ago at this point. Because Eli left Ole Miss. Last fall was 2003. So it's totally different NFL. I'm going off recent trends. We'll see what happens. But I would love for it to work for Bryce Young. Like I'm still a fan. I still want him to be the quarterback in Carolina. I would love for that to happen. I'm just looking at the team's actions, the recent history, and all that's telling me that it's probably not going to happen for Bryce here in Carolina, unfortunately. But I hope it does. We'll see whether it does or not. All right. Nick asking, how many games do the Panthers need to win, or what do Andy Dalton stats have to look like for the narrative to change that the Panthers to not set Bryce up for success? And I hit up Nick and I was like, are we talking about success this year or last year? And he said this year. And I was like, where the hell is that coming from? And he told me it's coming from the Twitter For You page, which is just a cesspool. Every time I turn on Twitter nowadays, I'm on the For You page. A bunch of people I don't even follow, don't care what their opinions are, and it's right there in my face. So I got to click over the following, where I still feel like I don't get to see the tweets from people who I want to see their tweets from. So we kind of hash this out over on Twitter or X, where the hell you want to call it. Bryce is put in a position to succeed this year, but last year he was not. Now, if the offensive line stays healthy, he's going to be in a much better situation. But the receivers still did not get open. The ones that weren't named Adam Thielen, the having all those multiple people that were in his ear, not having that one singular voice, going from Frank Reich as play caller, Thomas Brown's play caller, back to Frank to Thomas, that they did Bryce nothing. They did not do him. They did him a disservice last year here in Carolina. I think everyone should understand that at this point in time. Now, you're going to probably point to, Andy Dalton was great in Seattle. And look at Andy Dalton in Las Vegas. So clearly, Bryce can't play. I don't think that's the case. I think that they set him up for a failure last year. He was set up to succeed this year, and he was just broken, or at least needed a mental reset. And that's why we saw what we saw week 1 and 2. So I don't know if there really is a narrative that this season he was not set up to succeed. If there is, I don't understand who the idiots who are saying that are. And if you're one of those idiots, I apologize for calling you an idiot, but not really. I don't know. Let's go down to Chuck, who has a question about run. Well, actually, let me take a quick pause because I'm going too long here today. I'm being a gas bag. All right, let me take a quick pause. I'll come back and I'll answer Chuck's question about whether the Panthers should pay a certain running back on the roster here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's something you'd love to learn? As an adult, do you make time to learn new things as often as you'd like, or was that lost in childhood? Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. What's something you'd like to learn? Gardening, a new language, or maybe how to finally beat your best friend in bowling? Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because your back-to-school era can come at any age. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. I got a lot of y'all asking me about paying running backs, and it's a question we got here right now from Chuck. He says, I know how you feel about running backs. Use them, abuse them, and then lose them. But do you think the Panthers should try to sign Chuba Hubbard to a new deal and do a 1-2 punch with him and Jonathan Brooks, a la Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams, smash and dash part 2? If so, what type of deal do you think Dan Morgan should try to give Chuba Hubbard after this season that would be worth it? All right. So, no. No, Chuck, I don't think the Panthers should pay Chuba Hubbard anything other than federal minimum wage with no overtime pay, no holiday pay, no vacations, none of that. That's what I think they should give him if he wants to come back and be a Carolina Panther. Now, a couple of years ago, Deontay Foreman, he had negotiations with the team to come back. He ended up signing Chicago for $3 million. Was not much of a factor with the Bears that season. And I think it was actually probably last season, wasn't it? I would have actually been fine if they want to give him $3 million because that's basically federal minimum wage in the NFL for a running back. I would have been cool with that. I think Chuba is actually a better player and worth far more than that on the open market in this league, even if I don't value anyone not named Christian McCaffrey and I guess Alvin Kamara for that kind of salary at this point in time at that position. But like, here's the thing. They drafted Jonathan Brooks. He's not going to be a factor, it appears, this season. I don't even know where he's at as far as his rehab from the ACL. He's eligible to come off of the non-football injury list next week. It had to be the first 4 weeks of the season. He's going to miss the game on Sunday, and then he could be eligible. I have not seen any reporting. I've not been at practice, so I don't know how far away he is. It does not feel like he's someone that is that close. And kind of in a way like with Bryce Young and Andy Dalton, like, do you really want to insert him in when you look at how well Chuba Hubbard's playing so far? He only got 10 carries against the Chargers, but he got 66.4 yards per carry. He was excellent out of the backfield as a pass catcher, but also running the ball, of course, on Sunday against Las Vegas. Is that somebody that you want to sit on the sideline right now? And I had mentioned on Twitter that we're getting a glimpse of how Dave Canales is going to use Jonathan Brooks. And people are like, whoa, what about Chuba? I was like, guys, I'm not saying they need to bench Chuba Hubbard when he's available. I'm just saying when he's available and RB1, which in all likelihood is going to be next year. And a lot of the decisions they made during the draft back in April were for next year, like Brooks next year, Trevin Wallace next year, Charles Smith-Wade next year. A lot of these guys weren't coming in here to be factors for this team in 2024, which is nice. It's a departure from what we see in the past where we got to win right now, even though we're only going to win 5 games. Like that's how things were going with Scott Fitter and the past regimes. So I don't think that I would guess based off of where they drafted Jonathan Brooks and trading up to go get him, I'm guessing they're focused on him being RB1 next year and probably moving off of Miles Sanders and probably letting Chuba Hubbard walk. And we'll see what he gets in the open market. But is he coming back here to be the starter next year? I don't think so. And yeah, 2 back systems, that makes all the sense in the world. I look back in Seattle. That was a franchise that typically, like, of course, had beast mode. You didn't want to give anybody else to carry outside of Marshawn Lynch. No, but Chris Carson was the lead back. They weren't really doing the running back by committee thing when they had a guy they really liked. And there was times where they had to do it. Like Thomas Rawls was out there at one time. I think Kristen Michael, like they had to do it just out of necessity when they just didn't have that lead back. They have a lead back. He's just not healthy. And they have a lead back right now who is healthy. I don't think they want to do that whole smash and dash, have 2 guys here next season. Now, if they decide that they want to sign Chuba Hubbard to a deal, Tony Pollard, what he signed in Tennessee, that would kind of make sense. 3 years, $21.75 million. It's $10.4 million guaranteed, and I believe they can get out of it after 1 year. That would be what I would think would make sense for a running back of Chuba Hubbard's ilk. I think he's right there on par with Tony Pollard in the NFL. But I enjoy him, use him, abuse him, lose him. Well, that's what the plan should be this year. Jevin asking, do you think Jonathan Mingo deserves more targets in the coming weeks with Andy Dalton under center as a new opportunity for him to prove himself? Or is his sunsetting in Carolina already as well? Now, this is important news because we know, it's a good question. It's timely because we know that Adam Thielen, maybe you didn't know, but Adam Thielen was placed on IR on Tuesday with that hamstring injury that was suffered on that outstanding throw and catch from Andy Dalton to him on Sunday for a touchdown against Las Vegas. So he's going to be out for the next 4 weeks, can come back week 8 on the road at Denver. Now, the reporting I've seen is that it's not that significant where he should be able to come back on the early end. Well, the early end is right after 4 weeks. So it's obviously significant enough where he's not going to be available. Jalen Coker has been signed from the practice squad to the active roster to fill out the receiver room. And now there's opportunities for Xavier Legette, namely Jonathan Mingo. Also, and those are 2 guys that playing in the slot can really be a factor. And Mingo is somebody back at Ole Miss. That's where he really thrived. Having to go play the Z in the NFL last year, that has not really worked out for him. And we have seen that. So this is an opportunity for not just Mingo, but obviously Legette. And I think that's the guy that most people who are Panther fans are going to be focused on, wanting to see what he can do. Now, if Andy Dalton out there and with Adam Thielen on the shelf for the next 4 weeks at least, David Moore's getting an opportunity. I suppose Jalen Coker, of course, getting an opportunity out there. Very curious to see. Now, I'm concerned, as I had told y'all before the season, that would be bad news for the Panthers to miss Thielen or Johnson for any period of time, primarily Deontay Johnson. We saw on Sunday why. Adam Thielen, less so, but there's 2 vets. And the rest of the guys, Mingo didn't acquit himself well last year and has not done much this season either. We saw Legette have that nice catch and run for 35 yards on Sunday, but still, it's very early, and it's a lot to ask out of a rookie to be that number 2 receiver now in a step in to Adam Thielen's role, which he was doing on Sunday and didn't really do anything after that catch, but not to say that he can't. And then David Moore's an old vet. Now Jalen Coker, a lot of inexperience there. And even the other experienced player hasn't really been a key figure for his team since like 2020 or 2019. It's been a while. So we'll see what they are able to do. But that is one area I'm a little concerned about. It's good to have Andy Dalton out there now. And he spread it around to 7 different receivers on Sunday in that one against Las Vegas. But that's a significant loss. Also noting that Jordan Fuller, he's going to be on IR with the hamstring as well. Going to miss the next 4 games. Ejiro Evero came out before the season. He talked about how he felt like he had 3 starting safeties in Xavier Woods, Nick Scott, and Jordan Fuller. So the Panthers should be fine there. They did sign, who was it? They signed 2 guys from the practice squad at safety. Scrolling down here because I forgot off the top of my head. Damani Richardson and Russ Yeast. Yeah, Russ Yeast just like signed last week. So those 2 guys have been signed, and they actually got rid of Eku Leota from the practice squad as they're going to be adding some other players there. But that's what they did to figure things out at safety. Damian Lewis, who also left the game with an injury, I believe it was an elbow injury. There was no news on him on Tuesday. So that should be good news that he should be ready to go, hopefully. And maybe he only misses the game. But that's good news if there's no news as far as the injury front for a player coming off of a Sunday. All right, 2 more questions. Let me get to them quickly for me. Simon, wouldn't you say just the energy alone of a productive offense is enough to improve the play of the defense? And do you see that playing a part moving forward? The first 2 weeks were abysmal, but at the same time, 3 and outs from our offense truly beat down the morale of the defense as well. Possibly. I mean, we did see that everyone on the team was re-energized with Andy Dalton out there at quarterback. Again, they give up 9 straight scoring drives. I don't care if every single time was a 3 and out. You got to get a stop at some point in time. They did have halftime, correct? They had 12 minutes to sit there, have some apples and oranges and water and some Gatorade, and they couldn't get a stop. So you're not going to excuse that. It's possible. But even looking at the Chargers game, it's not like they started giving up everything in the second half. That's what we've seen in the past. So the offense has been anemic, and the defense at the end, like in the late in the third quarter and the fourth quarter, that's when they started giving up everything. They were giving up stuff in the first half. So were they tired when the game began? Because if that's the case, they really need to figure out their conditioning. I think it can help knowing that they believe in the quarterback and the offense's ability to score. It can re-energize them. But they got to be better. And I still have concerns even after 1 week. Where I know we're positive vibes right now, but I'm very skeptical about how good the defense actually is, and the Raiders being a terrible run team. That probably played a major role, and the fact that Gardner Minshew's their quarterback and the Panthers having success. Final question. Nathan asking, do you think that the Panthers will begin to look to move some expiring / aging assets to build cap space or draft capital? The game Sunday was incredible for everyone, but we still have some holes that need filling. Defensive tackle, edge, tight end, and future quarterback are all questionable spots for us going forward. If they go back to losing, then yeah, it would make sense that you would try to trade someone like Deontay Johnson, who has an expiring contract, maybe Jadeveon Clowney as well, who you could probably offload. I think most of that money is really for this year. And that would be the guys. I wouldn't want to see him get rid of JC Horn, but he's someone who has a lot of value for them, of course, as a young player who has 5th-year option already picked up for next year, and that gives time for a team to negotiate a new deal for him. They could do all that if they are losing and they're sellers at the deadline. But right now, they're 1-2. The vibes are good. They got a quarterback that can help them win games, and they're coming off of a big win and playing against a wounded team in Cincinnati that's 0-3. They could be 2-2 by the time we have another conversation on the mailbag next week. If you're 2-2 and you're going to Chicago, and it ain't like the Bears look very good, man, why decide? Because it's really, the schedule gets a lot harder in the second half. Early on, there's some gettable games. Now that you have Dalton out there, now the defense has got to actually continue to play well. Again, skeptical that this defense is brand new because Andy Dalton's in there. But I don't think it's time to start selling. Let's allow them a chance to lose more games before we have a conversation like that, or allow them to have more wins to have a conversation about maybe do they go get somebody. I don't think that should be the case either. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe and follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where I'll be back again next Wednesday to answer your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either add me or DM me to get those questions in for next week's edition of the show. But don't do that now. Wait until after the game. Do it on Monday. Do it on Tuesday. and get those questions in for next week's edition of the show. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always, and forever keep pounding. And I'll talk to y'all on Thursday, as we'll have our Locked On NFL crossover Thursday with Jake Lisco, one of the hosts of Locked On Bengals.